afraid to speak his mind. Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul is here tonight. Now, whether you agree or disagree, you always know where this guy stands. That's what I like, whether you agree with him or not. And the host of Fear Factor, comedian Joe Rogan, will join us. Always know where he stands also. The Republican candidates all had their different positions on the Federal Reserve. Ron Paul, anti-Fed. Mitt Romney, of course, pro-Fed, and Newt Gingrich, overfed. Newt Gingrich, overfed. As you know, Republican candidate Ron Paul on the show tonight. Very excited. Did you know it? You know, he's a gynecologist who has delivered over 4,000 babies. In fact, look at this. He has seen almost as many women naked as Newt Gingrich and Herman Cain combined. Okay, those two combined. He's almost. I say almost. Hey, the trailer for the upcoming movie, The Expendables 2, is coming out. You know those? Are you familiar with the franchise? Stallone's movie. It's an action film about a group of older elite mercenaries. Well, here's the trailer. Christmas and Ron Paul. Alrighty. I enjoy having this gentleman on. He is a 12-term congressman from Texas who is currently running as the Republican candidate, for the presidency of the United States. He has surged in the Iowa polls this week, and whether you agree with him or not, one thing you can't do is call him a flip-flopper. That's what I like about this guy. He's consistent. Please welcome Dr. Ron Paul. If you win, do they all get to come to the inauguration?
Absolutely.
There you go. Well, congratulations on your rise in the polls in Iowa. Where do you stand right now, today? Where are you?
In the polls?
Yeah.
It depends on which one.
Well, Iowa.
In Iowa, first or second, depends on which poll you
You're
look
like
at.
1% between
yeah,
you
it's real
and
close.
the
It's a statistical tie.
Now, do you enjoy the debating? Do you like that? Is that a forum that you...
Yes, I enjoy the debating, but I wish it were a real debate and I didn't have to wait 2 hours to talk 3 minutes.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the frustrating
part. Well, this is your third time running for president,
right.
And this is the most momentum of the three campaigns, wouldn't you say? Is this
no doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, okay. So, how do you account for the current success? What do you attribute it to?
Well, it isn't because I changed my message. The message has been the same, but the country is changing. You know, I've tried to prevent some wars from starting, and now the American people... Now the American people are tired of the war of Afghanistan 10 years. I've talked a lot about economics. That's what really got me motivated to talk and run for office. And there was a lot of handwriting on the wall about financial bubbles and housing bubbles. And now that they have come about, the credibility has built, and the people are very worried about the economy. And that's something I've talked about for a long, long time.
Now, you're 76 years old, and... You know, young people usually go with a young candidate, whether it's President Kennedy, certainly Barack Obama, but you seem to be doing the strongest among young voters, young people. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I don't have a complete answer for that, but yeah. I think my ideas are young, and they're very appealing.
But actually, some of them are quite old, about the gold standard and the whole deal. So those are those are old ideas that have come around again, aren't they?
But freedom is very appealing. It's based on principle. They know that I stick to my guns, that I follow the Constitution. But I think young people don't have their minds all mixed up after a while. You know, some people, especially if they go to Washington, and then they go to college and they really get their minds mixed up. And I think younger people tend to be more principled. And later on, we're taught to blend in and mesh in and go along with the crowd. You certainly notice that in Washington. People go there with high principles. Before you know it, they sort of change their minds.
So what role should the federal government play in people's lives?
Well, it's very minimal, but we have you know, a document that tells us exactly what it should be, and that's the Constitution. Right. So if they... Anybody that can read should know, but the most important part of the Constitution that tells us exactly what to do is Article 1, Section 8. It lists 20 things that we're allowed to do, and what we're not allowed to do, it is reserved for the people and the states. But basically, generally, it's the country was organized. They needed a strong national defense. That's not you know, a state matter. Right. But in general, it's to preserve liberty, to allow people to run their own lives, to spend their own money.
Now, you have a returning power to the state. Elaborate on state rights. What did they used to be able to do, they can't do? What should they be able to do?
Well, you know, we all use the word states' rights, but in a way, states don't have rights. Only individuals have rights. But the authority and the power goes to the states. But it's pretty open-ended. If you look at the Constitution, it says if we don't say what the federal government can do, everything is reserved, the powers and the rights, to the states and to the people. So in a way, when you look at that, you give permission to the states to do a lot of things, and sometimes they can mess up. Yeah. But it's the state's business, not the federal government. That's why we shouldn't have, you know, 100,000 federal bureaucrats telling the states and the people what to do. So.
Well, an example would be. Like, for example, the EPA. I mean, to me, it seems good if the whole country agrees we're not going to do this, whether it's coal or oil or whatever. I mean, if one state is allowed to pollute and another state isn't, and then it blows over into that, isn't it good to have certain things that everybody, as a country, we should agree on?
Yeah, and they have authority to do that because that is involved with interstate commerce, and they can do this, but it doesn't endorse the bureaucratic approach to create an agency, a government that preempts, no prior restraint. We don't want prior restraint with our First Amendment. We don't want prior restraint in the business sector either. So, but property rights should be protected. States should do it, and states can have agreements, but then if there's an argument, then the federal government should be involved, and the government should be involved in environmental issues, especially between national boundaries. You know, Mexico and Canada would have something to say. But the government's, this is one thing that many conservatives and libertarians slip up on, and that is on the environmental issue. But if you're a real strict property rights person, environments are protected because it's property, and you can't ever damage or pollute your neighbor's property. So it actually would have been a lot stricter than what happened in the Industrial Revolution, where big business and big government got together and allowed too much pollution to occur.
Now, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to ask you about legalizing drugs. Your point. Is it either you're for it or you're for states being able to do it? But don't tell me now. We'll answer that when we come back. Well, we'll talk to Paul right after this. Welcome back. We're talking with Ron Paul. Now, the question I asked right before we went to break was, are you for legalizing marijuana or the state's right to legalize it?
Well, the states certainly have some authority to regulate alcohol and drugs, but as a federal matter, there's nothing that says the federal government has the authority to do it. As I said before, the role of the federal government is to protect liberty. That means they should protect our religious liberties to do what we want, our intellectual liberty, but it also should protect our right to do to our body what we want, you know, about what we take into our bodies.
Even if it's harmful to you.
That's right, and really, the government can't protect us from ourselves. If they embark on doing something like that, government is totally out of control.
Would you be against seatbelt laws?
Yeah, sure. I'm for seatbelts, but against seatbelt laws.
Okay.
I mean, it's a wise thing to do that. It's a wise thing not to use drugs, too.
Right,
I mean, I have kids and grandkids, and I think it's terrible to use these drugs, but I want people to make their own minds up. Now, the states, what the worst part is when the states come to the point where they find out, say, marijuana is helpful for medical reasons, and I believe that is the case. The state legalizes it, and then you have the federal government. You have the federal government come in and overriding the state laws. That's really way over the top. But you know, quite frankly, I think a lot more people die from it, and there's more danger with the alcohol than there is with the marijuana.
Now, social issues seem to be coming up in this debate. People have to sign adultery pledges, and how about gay marriage? Where would that fit in?
You know, my position on marriage is the government ought to just stay out of it totally and completely and quit arguing about it. I mean, there was a time when it was a church matter or
Right.
a secular matter, and you know, this argument, it becomes in a way semantic. But you can have your religious values and get married in a church or do something else. So I think it would avoid all this arguing. I get sort of tired of that. But I have a lot of respect for marriage, of course.
It's interesting in Iowa, you're right up there. You and Newt are pretty much tied, yet you are almost the opposite of him on these social issues, and that's a conservative place, yet you seem to be doing well. So it's interesting.
And there was a poll out this week where I do very well with social conservatives because I recognize the principle of life and liberty. And you know, another thing that's helping is probably the most important social issue today and family issue is the economy.
Right.
You know, the family is threatened by this bad economy.
So tell us about taxes. Now, anytime anybody says they're going to do away with the IRS, well, that's going to get cheers anyway. But how, I mean, how there you go. Well, I mean, how realistic is that? I mention it because President Obama said, if I get elected, I want to do this health care thing. And boy, that just looked like boom, boom, fighting. How hard would that be to do that?
It would be difficult, but it's getting easier all the time. You know, sometimes they complain, you know, the lower half income people, they don't pay any income tax, and what are we going to do about it? I says, we're halfway there.
So what would our main source of revenue be?
Where it came from before 1913. But nothing can happen on the tax code. The tax collection is a symptom of an appetite for big government. So the people have to change their mind. If the people want us to be the policemen of the world and have welfare from cradle to grave, no, you can't get rid of taxation, and we'll continue on until we're totally bankrupt and our currency fails. But if you want a constitutional government, limited government, you really don't have to have income tax. But the people have to make up their mind. One person in Washington can't, you know, change the whole tax code.
Now, you're for lowering the corporate tax rate, and of course, everybody, ooh, evil corporations, blah. What would you lower it to, and why?
Well, my goal would be always to get as low as possible. Certainly, lowering the taxes on the corporations that have money overseas. See, we chase capital overseas because of our regulations and our tax code. But I would like to get rid of all that. But if you can't get rid of it, 5, 10, 15%, get it as low as you can to invite capital back. But you'd have to do other things too. I mean, the regulations would have to be changed, and some of the tediousness of getting a permit to start a business in this country. It takes 3 years sometimes to open up a new business. So you have to change a lot of things, but you have to get the economy growing again, and that means you have to cut spending, and that's why I proposed first year I'd like to cut spending by $1 trillion. Okay.
Now, when we come back, one area where most of your fellow Republicans seem to disagree with you is on foreign affairs, and we'll come back. We'll talk more with Dr. Paul right after that. Welcome back. We're talking with the Republican presidential candidate, Ron Paul. Now, on the you're sort of the lone wolf on this foreign policy thing. I was watching the other night. They're all kind of going after you there. Tell me about that. You think we went to war too easily with Iran?
Absolutely, but on that stage I'm a lone wolf, but I'm not a lone wolf with the people, because the people are sick and tired of the war. No, I'm on international relations, and we had the big debate before we went to war. And actually, I assumed we'd go to war in 1998. And I gave a lot of speeches on why we shouldn't do it. And it is, as far as I'm concerned, a disaster. And the founders had given us a way to prevent these kind of wars. They said, you're not supposed to go to war unless you declare the war by the Congress, which is endorsed by the people. That would have prevented it.
Okay. Now, this whole thing about Iran having a nuclear weapon, tell me, you don't believe that they do?
Oh, they don't, and they're not on the verge of it. The evidence does not verify this, but I don't want them to get a weapon.
But didn't they have a reactor that...
No, they have reactors. They're one of the few countries in the region there that belongs to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they're allowed to develop nuclear power, and they have no evidence that they've ever enriched and transferred it to weaponry. So there's a lot of propaganda going on. It's very similar to the propaganda that led up to Iraq, and we should be very, very cautious not to be motivated to go to war.
Now, you're for cutting foreign aid as well. Tell me about that. How much do you cut?
All of it.
All of it?
Foreign aid there's no proper authority. And I argue that for the most part, foreign aid takes money from the poor people of this country and gives it to rich people in the poor countries.
Yeah.
Because it becomes a political tool.
Well, let me ask you about Israel. He got this little tiny thing here surrounded by all these people that just hate them. And we Americans, we don't like to see the little guy get picked on. And they're our friend, and it seems like we should be helping them. No?
Right, I do think so. I think we should make sure they have their sovereignty and allow them to defend themselves, and they shouldn't be beholden to us. But when we take them over and they can't even devise a peace treaty, or they can't decide what to do on their borders without permitting us to give them the permission. But I think all this stuff in the Middle East backfires. Take for instance, Egypt. We paid Mubarak over $40 billion to be friendly with Israel. And that failed, finally broke down because people resent us being there and they get rid of their dictator. Now the radicals are taking over and they're in worse shape. And we won't be able to afford to do this. This is what brought the Soviets down. We usually, great empires end through economic reasons, they go bankrupt. And where's Israel going to be? And you know, when Israel was started, they had two principles. One was independence and self-reliance. And even Netanyahu said on the House floor just a few months ago that we don't need American troops to defend ourselves. We can take care of ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So the whole Arab Spring thing?
I think there's a lot of good, healthy things there, because, but it's not a healthy endorsement of our foreign policy, because part of this is rebelling against dictators that we have propped up. And a lot of what's going on, I mean, we've been interfered in Iran for so long, since 1953. We've been involved in messing up their economy and trying to overthrow their government. So these things tend to backfire on the long run. There's too many unintended consequences.
Give me your thoughts on the other candidates. How about Mitt Romney?
He used to be governor of Massachusetts.
Right, right. Yes, very good. That's like a Rick Perry answer. That was good, yeah.
Maybe that's what he should stay at, being governor. He's a nice guy.
How about Newt Gingrich?
He maybe should run for Speaker of the House again.
Michelle Bachmann?
She doesn't like Muslims. She hates Muslims.
Wow.
Yeah, she wants to go get them.
Wow, okay. Well, that's not good. John Huntsman. John Huntsman seems like a reasonable man to me, but he can't seem to get any traction.
No, and he is. He's a nice person. And he's a good diplomat. He knows what diplomacy is all about, and he's a thoughtful person.
And Rick Santorum, I never see him talk about it. It seems like to him, gay people, oh my God, that's the end of the world. He doesn't seem to talk about anything else. I mean, does he...
Gay people and Muslims.
Yeah, that's what this is. Now, let me ask you about Donald Trump. Is he a kingmaker? Have you sat with him and broken bread and gone to the hometown buffet?
No, he was very much offended, so I am getting a little bit worried.
Oh, he was offended? What
yeah. He said that Ron Paul doesn't know what he's going to do, and he can't ever win elections, so he doesn't know why anybody would ever support Ron Paul. Well, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing.
Did you mention that you've won 12 times?
Yeah, I did. I did, but he wasn't listening.
Now, let me ask you, would you rule out a third-party run?
I have not ruled it out absolutely, but I have no plans and no intention, because, you know, when I'm soaring in the polls and we're up in first and second place, that's way premature.
Quick question before we go. One quick question. Who's your favorite president? Who have we had that you said, that's what I want to do?
In Grover Cleveland. He was a great president. He was a Democrat, though, you know. Yeah. But I
just saw the whole crowd go, Grover Cleveland.
He loved to veto bills. He was a great veto and believed in the gold standard.
Well, sir, thank you very much. Good luck, my friend.
Thank you.
Ron Paul, be right back with Joe Rogan right after this. Let's welcome Joe Rogan. Joe! What are the odds you would be wearing that tonight?
Crazy. I got it sent to me. Perfect timing.
So obviously, Ron Paul fan. Yeah.
Huge Ron Paul fan. Honored.
And what do you like?
Honored to be on the show.
What part of his platform do you like?
Every single thing that comes out of his mouth, I go, yeah, finally. When he talks about the gold standard, when he talks about civil liberties, when he talks about everything he says,
Let me tell you, Pat. Have you ever seen Fear Factor?
Yeah, I'm the problem. See, you're the solution. I'm a part of the problem with this country.
No, I haven't seen it, but I'll be watching it from now on.
Right, there you go. There you go.
Ron Paul, ladies and gentlemen, come on.
But now you guys